Hi, my name's Nick Jankel. I have advised some of the largest organizations and government departments and non-profits in the world on innovation and leadership for the last 25 years. And in my conversations with Dov Baron, I have met truly a man of incredible depth and incredible breadth, which is a very rare thing in this space, who can help people explore the deepest layers of meaning in their work as leaders and unpack that and unleash that into their organizations to realign their organization around the deepest purpose a human being can have.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. Hey, would you do me a quick favor? Send me a quick note, DM me on one of the 4 social media outlets, one of the big ones, and tell us what platform you listen to us on. Is it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or some other app? Tell us. I'd really love to know that from you. And if you tell me one of your favorite episodes, well, I'm going to pick a winner and offer a prize of about $1,500. So decent prize. So let me ask you, what do you need to do to up-level your leadership? How can you wrestle the relentless beast of change that is never going to stop coming at you? How are you going to innovate in a constant, ever faster changing world of business? The answer is that you must be a transformational leader leading a transformational business. But how? That's the question. Well, stay tuned because that's where we're going on today's show. I'm your host, Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. If you're curious to know more, go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. This episode of Leadership and Loyalty is brought to you by our other podcast, Curiosity Bites. Curiosity Bites is the answer to the question, how can we bring people together who completely disagree? This is your chance to sit in on some really delicious conversations with some of the world's most interesting people, including astronauts, neuroscientists, philosophers, holy people, quantum physicists, neurosurgeons, entrepreneurs, Grammy Award-winning entertainers. I mean, it's just a vast array. This is exactly what your heart, your mind, your soul has been craving. Simply go to dovbaron.com and find out how you can sign up for and sink your teeth into the delicious Curiosity Bites. As always, we need your help in staying relevant. So please get yourself over to wherever you listen to us, whatever your platform is, and tell us, again, rate, review, subscribe to the show. If you are a regular listener, a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And we are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's dive in. Let's strip it down and really dive in. Innovation is more than ever a hot subject. But have you considered what real innovation is? It's not just coming up with something new. It's a mindset. And in many ways, it's a state of emotional fortitude that very few leaders actually have what it takes to do. Because innovation means change. Therefore, it's also inevitably means fear. It means chaos, and it means dealing with massive uncertainty. So what does medical science, innovation, and transformational leadership have in common when it comes to leading into an innovative future? Well, let's find out together, because my guest today is Nick Jankel. Now, he is an influential thought leader, a best-selling author whose life's work is in understanding how individuals and organizations can unlock transformation that forges the future. He has a medical science background from Cambridge University. He has worked with senior leaders in organizations like HSBC, Boots, Walgreens, Unilever, Diageo, Google, Nike, Merck, Wal-Mart, the National Health Service, programs with the WWF, that's the World Wildlife Foundation, not the World Wrestling Foundation. Oxfam, he's worked with entrepreneurs and social innovators on 4 continents. He's lectured at world-class universities, including Yale, Oxford, London School of Business, and he's even been advising at number 10 Downing Street, which, in case you don't know, is the head of the British government. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me to welcome the man who had his own TV show on the BBC, author of Now Root for Change, Mr. Nick Jankel.
I'm there. I'm with you. I'm feeling the crowd rising. I got my my dressing gown on. I'm taking it off.
Good lad. So Nick Jankel, in the context of leadership development, what's the question we should be asking that when you are on that cutting edge, and like me, you're always pushing the limits. What is the question we should be asking that we're just not asking? And as a result, missing the target.
So the questions that most leaders really don't want to ask are, what challenges do we face, particularly our customers, but could be users, could be employees, could be stakeholders, shareholders. What challenges do we have to solve which require our growth and maturity and evolution as an organization and as a group of leaders? It's so easy to answer the questions that we know we can solve because we're brilliant and smart and genius. And what that does is just avoids all the bigger challenges which are sitting there. And particularly at the moment, in this particular moment of our evolution as a species, we have an insanely rich array of challenges to solve as a species, at the species level. And I'm quite clear that politicians aren't going to solve them for us.
Really?
That's really clear. Exactly.
Oh,
I'm clear when you see what's going on. This is the solutions we face as customers, employees, citizens are for organizations to solve. And that's what we want to do. We want to focus our leadership and our innovation on the big, juicy challenges that someone's going to have to solve. And there's a huge opportunity to solve them. But to solve them, we're going to have to become wiser, more creative, more interesting, more insightful, more curious, whatever it is that we need to do to grow to solve them. And I call those transformational challenges because they require our transformation in order for us to then transform them for others, as in the people who pay, the people who have the pain.
Now, that's interesting because I've had this conversation with a good friend of mine where I'm saying, people that don't traditionally, when we look at that, there's a fall in the attachment to religion. People don't trust their religions. There's a fall in trust of Congress, of the House of Lords, the House of Commons. There's a fall in trust of governments, generally speaking, of politics. There is an innate distrust of business, particularly as the gap widens between the ultra wealthy and the ultra poor. So there's all this mistrust. And one of the conversations we've had is, my friends and I, is that I believe we as leaders need to take it on to rebuild the trust in business because we have the leverage and the power to do it. And that's a mighty hill to climb because of all the mistrust. And that's really what I'm hearing from you, is that we in business, in leadership, we're the ones who got to step into that challenge. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you just brought me back to my very first MBA lecture I gave. So I'm 25 years old or something crazy. And I put up a slide showing the Pew data on trust.
Right.
Religion down, politicians down. But businesses, this is 25 years ago, were going up, right? Trust in business was growing. Now, between then and now, there've been some own goals the corporate world has shot itself in the trust foot a number of times, but I still believe that the trust in brands is higher than other institutions, and I'm not saying we all have to go be woke capitalists, but that's a different conversation. But we as leaders can understand the value of trust, and we can spend our time and energy on rebuilding trust with our customers, consumers, future customers and consumers, future employees, which is huge now, right? I saw today 1 in 4 employees is planning to resign in the next time. That is a huge statistic. If you're a leader thinking on average 25% of my workforce don't think that being part of this culture is worthy of their time and energy, right? And obviously there's many different reasons for that, but we can build trust. One of the things you learn as an innovation consultant is that innovation doesn't happen without trust. Trust is the lubricant of all change, whether that's at the individual interpersonal level or on the level of a multinational with 100,000 staff or whatever. And the great thing about trust is, even though you can kill it, you can corrode your trust, you can also nurture it and cultivate it.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things I think you learn as a human, is that trust is actually built not through ad campaigns. It's built through things going wrong, whether that's an employee level or your customer care level, things going wrong or conflict, some kind of disagreement, and you heal it, you repair it together. And then people learn, oh, things can go wrong and yet we can still stay friends, brand friends, employee friends, whatever it is.
Yeah. So every time something goes wrong, now you and I have somewhat different backgrounds originally, but as we talked about in our previous conversation, there's a crossover coming at it from different places. But a big part of my history was that I was a psychotherapist, Jungian psychotherapist, and when things go wrong, in psychotherapy we call that trauma, and I talk about there's a business trauma. You can have a business trauma, and that is not necessarily that you got it could be a loss of money, but there's a business trauma of 1 in 4 of your people want to leave, right? That's traumatic. That's like, oh my God, the girlfriend is talking about walking out, and and she's on the brink. So it could be any one of those. And I know because of your background, one of the things you talk about is that mastering our biology is mastery of our leadership. Talk to us about that in the context of trauma and leadership.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. There's a huge topic there. So we've got trauma on the individual level as leaders, which I think is only just beginning to be discussed in the leadership circles. We've known about it for a long time. I've started talking about it more openly with clients and with teams. The conversation is getting to a higher level. People start to realize trauma isn't a negative. It's intense, but it's not necessarily something we got hushed up and and keep to our therapy sessions. It's something we can talk about more openly, become more conscious of. So we've got trauma as individuals, absolutely. And I do think a lot of leaders, let's call them diminishing habits, ultimately stem from some kind of traumatic or very stressful experiences in their formative years. And that could be with parents, caregivers, but that also could be in their early jobs, right?
Yeah.
Particularly if it's a while ago in the old world of work. But we've also got organizational trauma. And one of the things that you see that's fascinating when you do innovation work, because innovation work is, as you said in the intro, innovation work is like the place where the organization is most exposed and vulnerable to chaos, disorder, things coming in and making your business model obsolete because you start thinking about it. So that stuff's already happening, but in the innovation group, team, whatever, you actually consciously go and find the edges of your current business model. Right. Whereas the rest of the business, you try and never go near there because it's terrifying and horrible. So just you try and optimize the hell out of it. So the innovation team is a vulnerable place to be. And one of the things you discover in whoever's responsible for innovation, growth, strategy, business model evolution, whatever, design thinking. Organizational trauma lives on, even though no one is in the company who was there 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, when someone tried something and it burnt somebody and it was painful and exhausting and whatever. But the institutional memory is still replaying the trauma, just as our personal memory is still replaying our own trauma that happened 30, 40 years ago in every conversation we have and in every relationship we have in the workplace. And so
I want to just put a pause there, because I think before you go any further, I want people to grasp that, because I don't want to talk over anybody's head, because I want people to understand this, because it's a very sort of foundational part of the work I do. Is I say, do you think what happened in your childhood affect you? People go, no, that was the past, right? And I go, well, here's the news. Your past is leaking all over your present and is about to poison your future. But okay, so that's a Dovism, but let's just look at how that works. And then I'll show them, how do you, and we use a word, and how do you see this word? Because all meaning is subjective. And I go this, and I go, where do you think that meaning came from? And then we boil it back. We just have a look. Okay, so here's the word love, or here's the word marriage. Where do you think you got that idea from? Here's what it means. You got that from your childhood. It's echoing into your present. And so one of the things I talk about, and I've never heard anybody else say, is what is the trauma of the business that is still echoing into the present, even though nobody's here? So, as we like to say in private work, we'll say, are the monsters still alive? So if you were molested as a child by somebody, is that monster still alive? And the answer is often no, but the monster's still alive inside of your coconut. And so the monster of a business can be alive in that you had this shitty CEO who came in and was a complete narcissist and dictator. The echoes of that are still there. That is a very important point. And now people are listening to that, which is great, but they're saying, okay, but what do I do? I fired the CEO, the board fired the CEO. Most of these people never worked under that person. How do we get rid of those echoes, Nick?
That's an amazing question. So like you, Dov, I think we have developed in our business, predominantly by me, a process for dealing with past pain, but more importantly, more than the pain, the patterns that now exist on top of the pain. I don't necessarily believe that you have to go back to the original pain and have a whole big chest beating, drum circle, trip to the New Forest, wherever you go to do corporate retreats, whatever. But you do have to look at the patterning, and you have to look at the emotions that are anchoring the patterning in place. Yeah. The same is at the group level. And organizations are just crystallizations of individuals, right?
Yeah.
So, because of that, and because of the narrative structures we hold, the cognitive biases, the groupthink, then the hiring and recruiting around the groupthink, they're actually in many ways more challenging to break through than an individual is. So you can do a one-to-one with a leader, and within 4, 5, 6 sessions, you can have some pretty big movement. Organizations are now systems at the level of 100,000, 300,000, right? Super challenging to work on. And there are so many different tools you can use. So we look at 3 types of tools: behavioral tools, which are the ones everyone wants to do because they seem to be nice and neat and ordered and sort of behaviorist, and they're not messy. Then there's sort of cognitive ones you can do, and then there's emotional ones you can do. And I believe that, like I do with individual work, a mixture of behavioral, cognitive, and emotional is always what happens, is always what works, right? I'm a believer in 2 levels of intervention. I'm a believer in top-down. Absolutely, you have to work at that 20-person, 100-person, if it's a big company, 5,000 top leader position. No matter what we think about hierarchy, trickle down is still occurring, particularly when people are modeling behaviors, modeling attitudes, modeling ways of interpersonal skills, dealing with painful moments, whatever. And I'm also a massive believer in bottom-up. And so, so for bottom-up means working with the people often who are already most agile, innovative, let's call them emotionally open, which tend to also be younger people because they've come in from a different background. parents were baby boomers. They went to yoga when they were 6, whatever it is. You know, they're more literate
Yes.
in emotional and sort of wisdom conversations than a lot of people. Much more open about their own stuff. They have other issues, obviously, their maturity levels. So I believe that best thing to do is you do top down and bottom up, and you are essentially trying to create a kind of middle layer that through rising stars who are already modeling and maybe just need a little bit of guidance and some actual tangible work to do, projects. I believe you've got to sort of work your way into this new culture. You can't just do some circles and talk a bit and everything's going to work. You've got to show people what it looks like to give people a higher risk appetite, to not punish them when they try 5 things and they all need to be tweaked, and not punish them. Not just, I don't mean punishing sort of you're sacked or you're demoted. Those subtle, nice ways we punish people, particularly in collegiate organizations, which are very nice and everyone's very grown up and they've been to Harvard and Yale and Stanford and everyone's very clever and nice. There's still so much punishment going on for sticking your neck out, for challenging the assumptions and status quo. And so a good innovation process that then brings bottom and top together in the same room for 2 days, 4 days, 6, that is a place where you say, we will challenge every assumption that underpins our current business model, but we're going to do it in a curious, co-creative way, not an aggressive, this is what you got wrong, you baby boomer CEO, you don't get it. We're going to do it together. And so people live through the experience of challenging the C-suite, with the C-suite there welcoming the challenge, but it's done in a structured way focused on customer pain rather than a big, I don't believe sort of big town halls, beating chests, letting people basically moan really helps that much. Yes, sometimes you want some pressure release, definitely. Yes. But neurologically, if we get into a moan zone, it's not really helpful to anyone. Just like in therapy, you don't want people just sitting there going, my dad did this and my mum did this and everyone's really mean to me. It's not changing anything, right?
No, absolutely.
So that's kind of where I kind of come in as a bottom up. Let's get some stuff happening. Top down, let's do some leadership development. Let's shift how you speak. Let's give you some tools. Let's give you some scripts. We use a lot of scripts in our organization. And people go, scripts, are you a call center? But that's some genius in sales team and call center codification, where you are creating a really brilliant script, which you can update and evolve all the time with fresh insight, to how to repattern yourself as a leader to ask for feedback in a way that people can feel they can give it to you, but it's not a free for all.
So let's take that as a practical example for a moment. What might be a short script that would set that up? That somebody could listen to this right now, they walk away and they go, okay, I can go try that. I don't have to, rehearse it to death. It's something simple. Yeah, like what?
So one of my catchphrases, I don't know if that's the appropriate term. I did have a BBC show, but I don't have a catchphrase yet. Have to think of one. But one of my potential catchphrases is connect before you correct. Right. It's a super simple one. So you're about to go and tell your report, your co-workers, your 10-person leadership team that they haven't done something right according to your particular, view of what's right, which is an important part of the script. We'll come on to that in a second. So first mantra is, before you tell anyone, and this includes your children, what they did wrong, connect with them first, because that pulls them and you into the right brain network, which we now know are totally different brain networks for when you are angry and frustrated from when you're curious and empathic. So you by connecting and going, what's it like for you? What's energizing you right now? Where is the bright stuff in your day at the moment? Whatever, these are all interchangeable. Yeah. You connect with them. They feel your heart open. They then open to you. This can be 30 seconds, by the way. It's not like a big show and tell. And then you go, I noticed blah, 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 that something didn't happen as we expected, or something didn't happen as I wanted it to. And there's 2 important things there. One is, as we agreed, it didn't happen in the way we agreed, which doesn't say it's right or wrong, but we agreed X, it didn't happen. Right. And I'm curious to know what's going on for you. And in fact, I'm actually in the middle of writing a blog about curiosity-led management, because it's stay curious, right? Because it's the right brain network for really learning. Second thing is to own your own expectations. I thought we were doing this, it didn't happen. And you're already setting people up to share their actual thought process, which comes back to trust, because 9 times out of 10, no one is sat there going, how can I disappoint my boss? That's what I'm going to try and do now. I'm going to try and disappoint my boss. I'm going to try and miss all my targets. I'm going to try and mess up that innovation program that we just spent 5 million on, and the whole company's watch. People are trying to do absolutely their best, given their resources, mindset, trauma levels, stress, at home stuff, whatever. So by already understanding that, we are already starting to encourage people to share themselves in an appropriate way, because I don't want to know all about your mum and your dad, because that's when we're at work, we're not in group therapy. And amazing what happens. One of the things I also love to teach leaders is ask for feedback on how you go feedback.
Yes.
Whilst not saying that they're right, you're never saying that you're right. You're just saying, I'd love some feedback on how I delivered this feedback. What give me, and you can say, doesn't mean you're right and I'm wrong. I'm just really interested to know how I delivered. And then you can go away and process that and upgrade the script.
And the thing about it, though, Nick, where I think, again, we are on the same page, is if we really boil it down, this kind of leadership, yes, it is transformational. Yes, it is all the things we want to talk about, but it really, at the bottom line, it's humanistic. It's like, I see you as another human being. I may have a higher levels of responsibility inside of the organization. I may be more accountable to X, Y, or Z, but I'm no different than you. I've got my, sometimes the feces hits the fan in my house as it might in yours. And I've got a history, as do you. And I'm going to approach you as a human being. And I think that, you and I are on the cutting edge of that, because certainly you're a little younger than me, but, we grew up with this idea that the leader knows it all and the leader has the power to punish. And one of the things that we teach around the accountability is accountability is based on consequences, not on punishment. And people go, what do you mean? Well, if it's punishment, think about, and we use the example of kids, just like you just did. And we say, if it's like this, do this or else you will have to, this will happen. Right. And we go, no, that doesn't work, because I'm going to rebel against that. So what's the answer? People can create their own consequences. So is this what we agreed upon, Charlie? Yes. If this is not met, what is the consequence that you would like to set for yourself that I can hold you to, that I'll be your partner and I'll hold you to that consequence? And Charlie goes, oh, I'll have it done for you by Tuesday. Yeah, I know you said that. What's the consequence you said? What was the consequence you'd like to set? Well, I'll buy you coffee. Well, that's not kind of work for me. And because consequences need to sting, right? What would that be? Oh, okay. So now Charlie set his own consequence, or her own. Charlene has set her own consequence. She's okay with it. You're okay with it. We've agreed not only on what it is we're going to get done, but on the consequence. And everybody is now treating each other like adults and like humans who can then say, listen, I know we have an agreement to have this by Monday at 9, but it's now Friday at 4, and the feces just hit the fan because my kid's got to go to hospital, right? And I'm willing to fulfill my consequence because I can't meet the agreement, but I want you to know here's what goes on. At which point I can say, that's the higher priority, take care of your kid. Or I can say, well, you'll have to fulfill your consequence, but we'll get somebody else to pick up the, it's like the humanity is what we've missed.
I love that. Love it. Yes, human. I think, as you said, I got taught, first of all, that the people at the top of the hierarchy were not there to serve me. They were there to serve themselves / the shareholders. And that whole pyramid, I'm just here to get the bag, to carry the bag for this person who's there to carry the bag for this person. They actually used to call it in the ad agency, you're the bag carrier. It's like the gopher, Yep. I was like, secondly, I was taught that when someone doesn't do something for you, you take it personally. It's a personal ouch.
Personal attack. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've all been enculturated into that belief, including, as you said, that I have to be the smartest person in the room. And one of the things I put in my book is if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you need to be the wisest person in the room, but not the smartest, because your 23-year-old who just finished their PhD in coding should be the AI expert, way smarter than you. Then there's the blockchain guy, girl, whatever. Then there's the new business model. They should be that absolute smartest person. And someone said to me, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Because you want to be wise, right? You want to be relational, not expert in the knowledge base of your business. Because actually there should be younger people who are just more expert, who don't want to be leaders. And then the next thing is this obsession we have with our management position and our value as humans, which comes back to what you said about our lack of meaning of our own capacity, who we are in the world. And I try and distinguish people between worth and value in terms of I'm worth more to the business because I'm the CEO and the buck stops with me and I have to deal with blah, 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 blah. So that's why I get paid the big bucks. But as a value as a human being, you and I are absolutely equal.
Of course.
But one of the things you mentioned is, and I have a very similar sort of idea of how you enroll your reports in managing themselves with your guidance.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about self-management, just let them do it. And in self-organizing systems, no way, particularly not after years of being disempowered by MBAs and universities and getting things right and wrong. People need so much support, but to enact them in their own management so that the pain and the boss is really them. Or as I would even go one step further, the boss is the purpose of the business. That's the boss.
Yeah, that is what we got to come to in the second part. So the boss is the purpose. We're going to come to that in part 2. Loving our conversation. I hope that you are loving our conversation as you are listening in, as you're watching this. And I want to make sure that you know how to get a hold of Nick. We're going to come back in part 2. We'll just a click away. But before we do that, let's just get Nick to tell you a little bit. If you please, Nick, tell people where they can find out more about you, your book, and all your resources.
So the easiest place is www.switchonnow.com. And there's stuff to sign up, free stuff, podcasts, blah, blah, books, whatever. That has everything goes there. And obviously on all the major channels. I do really like LinkedIn. I'm really getting into a bit of LinkedIn connection. So do find me there, Nick Jankel, say hello. And then on all the channels.
Fabulous. Well, we'll make sure, of course, that all that is shared in the show notes so that you'll be able to find Nick and his work. And of course, his book. We'll make sure all that is shared in the show notes. All right. We're going to be back in one click. So stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you can be a transformational leader of a transformational organization that is constantly bending, twisting, and making the best of all the innovation that you need. We'll be back in just one click. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.